From one great evangelist to the next, we are joined now for some Fulton Sheen insights by the founder of Word on Fire Ministries and the Bishop of Winona, Rochester, Minnesota, Bishop Robert Barron. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us. I have heard you call...
Good to be with you.
It's so great to have you join us. I have heard you call Archbishop Sheen the patron saint of evangelizing through the media, and I understand that his portrait hangs outside of your Word on Fire studio doors. Do you have a personal devotion to soon-to-be Blessed Fulton Sheen, and how has he inspired your work?
I do indeed. In fact, if I take about 20 steps from where I'm sitting right now, I'd see this picture of Fulton Sheen. I've got a bust of Fulton Sheen on my desk. He's, for a long time, been a hero of mine. I must say this, my generation didn't really pay much attention to Fulton Sheen. My parents did. So my mom and dad were great devotees of Fulton Sheen. They would have watched him on TV, would have listened to him on radio. My generation didn't really pay that much attention to him. I discovered him, I'll say honestly and humbly, through a lot of my students, because largely through EWTN, they began playing Fulton Sheen again. And so the generation of my students at the seminary came to love him and know him. And through them, I kind of rediscovered Fulton Sheen. And I remember when I got a bunch of his tapes, and I had them in my car back in the old days with, little cassette tapes. And I listened to retreats and talks of his, and I got into Sheen in a way that I wasn't when I was a younger man, even a younger priest. But my students helped me appreciate how important he is.
Mm. And now a whole new generation may be learning to know who he is because of this beatification. And Your Excellency, there are a few parallels between your life and Sheen's. You both are from Illinois. You both spent time at the Catholic University of America. Both have been professors. And I understand that Fulton Sheen also spent some time in Minnesota, the state where you are a bishop.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what influence do you know that Minnesota may have had on Archbishop Sheen?
A big one, and here's why. He spent only a year at St. Paul Seminary up here in St. Paul. That's where I send most of my seminarians. I know it very well. I'm up there a lot. Sheen was there for a short time, but when he was there, a professor, a formator, taught him the discipline of the Holy Hour. Mm. And so Sheen, I think even beyond his preaching, will be known as the great saint of the Holy Hour. Mm. Well, heck, he learned it in Minnesota.
Wow.
So we claim that here with a lot of pride. That seminary, even though he was there a short time, had a big impact on him, and therefore in God's interest, always interesting providence through him to the whole world. Mm. But I think Minnesota can claim that influence.
And that Holy Hour is a great legacy. Our media landscape is so fragmented today, including the Catholic media landscape. People can get a large following with a nice microphone, podcast setup, but maybe no formation behind it. How do you think Archbishop Sheen would react to this reality today? And can you speak about how his preaching and his evangelization really came from a strong intellectual and spiritual foundation?
It's a massively important point. I think Sheen would be bothered by the fact that you have a lot of people that just put a shingle out and say, I'm a Catholic spokesman, listen to me. Fulton Sheen had an extremely rich academic formation, seminary level, Catholic U, and then of course the agrégé advanced doctorate from Louvain. Mm. He said, and I believe him, that he read every single word of Thomas Aquinas in Latin. He had a very rich intellectual formation. You know who writes the preface to Sheen's first book? G.K. Chesterton himself. Hmm. So, and then he taught for 20 years at the Catholic University. He begins his evangelical work only after a long apprenticeship as a teacher, as a writer, as a student of the Catholic intellectual tradition. I try to stress this all the time with people. Over the years, when younger people have come to me and say, Bishop, I want to get into, evangelizing or using the media. And what I always say to them, I want you to use the old medium of books. I want you to read and read and read and read before you even dream of getting in front of a microphone. Because that is a very serious problem. Mm-hmm. Sheen's genius and charism was, when he did his more popular evangelization work, it was grounded in Chesterton and Newman and Aquinas and Augustine and the Bible, which, by the way, he knew exceptionally well. Yes, that's, I think, maybe the most important lesson we take from him.
That's a great reminder for many of us. Archbishop Sheen is known as being a priest for priests. Can you reflect on that? Have you drawn inspiration from Sheen, not just in your media ministry, but in your vocation as a priest specifically?
Yep. Absolutely. His great book, A Priest Is Not His Own. A book of his I often recommend still to engaged couples is Three to Get Married. You know, that wonderful text where he talks about you need three persons. You need the bride, the groom, you need Christ, to whom both bride and groom look. And only when the two of them together fall in love with Christ will they truly have a strong relationship. It's a super important point that he develops there. But that other great book on priesthood, The Priest Is Not His Own, that the priest belongs to Christ in such a way that he becomes not only priest, but also victim. And Sheen develops that idea, I think, very powerfully. And I've shared that with seminarians and fellow priests over the years. We sacrifice, a priest, someone who performs a sacrifice, that's true. But also the priest conformed to Jesus becomes himself a sacrifice. That's the John Paul II law of the gift, you know, that you give yourself away as an offering to your people. Sheen helped me to see that in a big way. Another book of his that really impacted my priesthood, I must say, is his Life of Christ, which is his masterpiece. He wrote something like 90 books, but I think that's the greatest of his books. And it brings all of his strengths together. But see, when you study the life of Christ, well, Christ is the model for all priests. The priest is an alter Christus, another Christ. That book impacted my priesthood a lot.
This year, we have been celebrating 250 years since the founding of the U.S., and soon Archbishop Sheen will be beatified, the first U.S.-born bishop to be beatified. Can you put into context for us how important is Fulton Sheen's life and legacy to American Catholicism?
Super important. You know, I quoted him. I gave a talk on the Mall for the 250th, and Sheen said memorably, the Declaration of Independence is at the same time a declaration of dependence upon God. And he was drawing upon the, you know, we hold these truths to be self-evident and that our rights come from our Creator, et cetera. So it's a beautiful, typically paradoxical remark of Sheen. Yes, we're declaring independence from the British king, but we're declaring at the same time our dependence upon God. He saw the theological roots of the American political experiment. That's an exceptionally important move. He was a very proud American and a very proud Catholic bishop, and he saw the two of them as you know, mutually implicative. Sheen was certainly, you know, willing to criticize America when he thought it was appropriate. He was, of course, a vigorous opponent of worldwide communism. But I think most importantly, he saw the link between theological assumptions and American democracy.
We've talked about the parallels between you and Sheen, and I'm curious, when people compare the two of you, what do you make of that? Do you see yourself as carrying on Sheen's legacy today?
Oh, I suppose in some ways. It embarrasses me because I'm pretty much unworthy of that comparison. Yeah, you know, the points of contact, you mentioned we're both from Illinois, that's true. And maybe it's the intellectual formation. I mean, I didn't start my evangelical work till I was about 40, and I had, you know, done my doctoral work, and I had written a number of books, and I had taught for a long time before I started. Maybe that's the point of contact that I would say is, you know, most important. But, you know, Sheen is the greatest preacher in the history of our country. We probably wouldn't imitate his style that much today. It's you know, a little bit, for our standards, a little bit over dramatic maybe. But boy, the substance of Sheen's preaching is extraordinary. And the fact that it still speaks to people despite the stylistic changes. You know, he has more of a orotund 19th century oratorical style. But despite that, the message comes through. And that's something of great moment.
And real quick, while I have you, what do you think of this moment for Illinois Catholics? I mean, the first U.S.-born Pope is from Chicago, now the first U.S.-born bishop to be beatified from Peoria. I imagine you must be proud.
Yeah, it's my home state, and I am proud of that. And, you know, it always speaks to the church. That people don't come out of nowhere. They come up out of a church. And so just as Pope Leo was shaped by, you know, his family in Chicago and the church there, so Fulton Sheen was, you know, by the church in Illinois. And that's a tribute to them, a tribute to his teachers, to his family, to the people that formed him. So yeah, I think we should, take legitimate pride in that, we Illinoisans.
Bishop Robert Barron, thank you so much.
God bless you.